Do you struggle to understand TV shows, movies, or native speakers in general? I've been there too. In fact, this was one of the biggest challenges I faced while learning English. The moment I turned off the subtitles, it was like I didn't know any English at all. It took me a while to figure out why this was happening to me, and more importantly, how to fix it. In this video, I'll share with you the two main reasons what I think understanding movies or native speakers in general is so difficult. Hey friends, welcome to the channel. My name is Jefferson and I'm passionate about learning languages. I successfully learned English and French entirely on my own, just using the internet. On this channel, I'll share everything I learned during my journey so you can improve your English as fast as possible. I know firsthand how challenging it can be to improve your listening skills, especially when it comes to understanding native speakers. But don't worry. By the end of this video, you'll have practical tools and strategies that you can implement right now to make real progress in your English. Let's start with the first challenge when it comes to understanding movies and TV shows, vocabulary. Here's the thing. We can only understand words we already know, the ones that are part of our passive vocabulary. Remember that passive vocabulary includes words you can recognize when you see or hear them, but they might not come to mind when you are speaking. In my experience, when using subtitles, it's often easier to infer the meaning of a new word, but try to do that while listening. That's a whole different story, and in my case, it's kind of impossible. So, if we want to ditch subtitles, we need to expand the number of words we recognize. The truth is, TV shows and movies are packed with diverse vocabulary and expressions. Each character has their own unique way of speaking, and if we don't have a solid foundation, it's gonna be tough to catch and understand what they're saying. For instance, in a sitcom like Friends, Joey uses a lot of slang, while Ross speaks more formally. And if we are not familiar with those styles of speaking, it's gonna be kind of impossible to keep up with the conversation. For me, learning words is the cornerstone of the process of learning a new language. The more words we know, the more we can understand when we listen, and the more material we have access to. This is crucial because variety is key to maintaining the motivation throughout the journey. Think of vocabulary as the building blocks of the language. The more blocks we have, the more we can build. Without enough words, it's like trying to build a house with just a handful of bricks. It just doesn't work like that. Let's move to the second reason. You might not have had enough exposure to a language yet. Think about it. If you haven't spent a lot of time listening to native speakers, it's not a surprise that it's difficult for you to understand them. This is so important because even if you know the words they're using, the way that they say them can be completely different from what you expect. Native speakers often change their intonation during the conversation, blending words together, and the velocity of the speech is gonna vary along the conversation, so you have to be familiar with that. I remember watching the first episode of Friends and being unable to recognize some of the words in the conversation the characters were having. They were just speaking at a natural pace and having a good time, and I was there kind of lost trying to, pick some words, but the reality is that I didn't understand any of that. Okay, with those two difficulties in mind, let's talk about what I did to change my situation, what I did to improve my listening skills to the point where I don't rely on subtitles anymore. The first thing I did was to look for material at my level. I realized that watching Friends was a bit too advanced for me at that moment. So I went to YouTube and watched short videos about topics that were interesting to me. Most of these videos were educational content, so the speech was just right for me to understand. I spent an absurd amount of time watching videos from channels like TED or Coursera, but I didn't watch these videos randomly. You see, I knew the importance of repetition in learning, so I watched the same video several times with different approaches and on different days. Here's an example. On day 1, I watched the video for the first time without captions, really trying to understand as much as I can. On day number 2, I watched again the same video, but this time I turned on the subtitles. If I encounter new words, I look up their meaning. For this, I use two resources: Cambridge Online Dictionary and ChatGPT. The reason for using these tools is that they offer example sentences for the words, and in the case of ChatGPT, it explains the nuances and the correct interpretation of the words in a given sentence. Finally, on day 3, I watch it again without subtitles to test my improvement. Depending on how I feel during this attempt, I decide whether to add a fourth day or leave it at day 3. This is important because sometimes watching the same content can be boring, even if there are several days between viewings. I applied this strategy to most of the videos I watched on YouTube, and over time, my passive vocabulary really took off, and my listening skills were much better overall. At this point in my journey, I did what I believe was the turning point in my English learning. I started listening to podcasts whenever I could. I was listening for at least 3 hours every single day. I took advantage of the convenience that listening offers as a passive activity, so I did it while doing activities that didn't require much mental effort. So I listened while cooking my meals, walking to university, cleaning the apartment, and even washing the dishes. I transformed those dead moments of life into meaningful learning experiences. I think doing this was key because even if I didn't pay attention 100% of the time, my brain was getting used to the sounds of the language, was getting used to the velocity, the change or intonation that happens during a conversation. So I think it was worthwhile. I just let the language flow into me without even being concerned about whether I caught everything or not. As the weeks passed, the conversations became clearer and clearer, and with the strategy that I just mentioned, I learned the most frequent words. However, as you can imagine, to really enjoy interesting content, a much broader vocabulary is needed. For example, when listening to a particularly interesting podcast, I found myself in a position where I understood most of the sentence, but there were one or two words I didn't know who were crucial to the meaning of the conversation. So I did the following. I applied the same strategy I used with the YouTube videos, but this time I took chunks of the podcast. I read the transcript of those parts which I didn't fully understand, and I looked up the meaning of the words I didn't know. As these words are least frequent to encounter, I decided to use Anki to really learn and understand them. Anki is a flashcard app that uses an algorithm to battle the forgetting curve. I found it easier to pull the full sentence on one side of the flashcard and on the other side, the meaning of the word with other examples in different contexts. It just remains to check your Anki for 5 or 10 minutes every day, and with that strategy, you are getting those words into your long-term memory. In a matter of months, I improved my listening skills and my vocabulary in a way that was unbelievable. It was the result of spending a lot of time watching interesting content in the language, so it was a pleasant effort. All this background gave me the confidence to jump to series. I choose sitcoms before movies because their style is more often conversational. And I started with Friends. I tried to alternate between episodes. In some, I watched with captions, and in others, I didn't. By the end of the 6th season, I was watching mostly without subtitles. I also watched other series before I had the confidence to try my first movie. Here and there, I encounter new expressions, or suddenly I don't catch completely a sentence. So if that happens, I momentarily turn on the subtitles, check the meaning, I repeat that part for a little while until I think I'm confident with that, and I move on. I don't think it's helpful to aim for perfection. I know that if I continue to exposing myself to a language, I will get to a point in which I can understand almost everything I hear. But I am not reaching it. I'm just trying to have fun and enjoy the process. I think that's the key. Check this video in which I explain other strategies you can use to increase your vocabulary. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.